We got some big time news coming in from Adam Schefter that we will dive into on today's edition of Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and I appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. So there's a lot of conversation right now on how many picks teams should be allowed to trade in future years, and Adam Schefter gave some insight that might actually be changing. That's what Schefter had to say, saying there's going to be a push by at least one team this offseason to extend the NFL trade limits from 3 years of picks to 5 years of picks. Now, as it stands right now, you can only trade picks for the next 3 seasons, but it sounds like a team could be willing to up that to 5 years. And I wonder which team that is. Now, I think this could just be one NFL GM, one ownership group being like, hey, let's just go this route like the NBA has, where you can trade picks for the next 5 seasons. But what if it's a team like the Cincinnati Bengals? What if the Bengals know that Joe Burrow might eventually ask out from Cincinnati? And with them right now only being able to get 3 first-round picks in a potential deal, unless a team has multiple picks for 1 year, what if they're the team that wants to extend this down the line and be like, hey, Burrow's probably worth 5 first-round picks. So let's try to get this rule changed just in case he does ask out. Or any of these other teams with these superstar quarterbacks like a Josh Allen on the Bills, Lamar Jackson on the Ravens, what if they just want to kind of give themselves the insurance where they could get the most draft capital possible if those quarterbacks potentially ask out? Now, I will say, this might not be good for the NFL, because if you are a GM and you are on the hot seat, you might just abuse this new rule where you're trying to almost save face, where it's like, hey, what if the Vikings this offseason and GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was still calling the shots, and obviously he is on the hot seat, and then maybe a potential quarterback like a Baker Mayfield, not like the level of Joe Burrow where he could be worth 5 first-round picks, but what if like a Baker Mayfield becomes available and Kwesi's like, hey, my job's on the hot seat, screw these draft picks for the next couple of years. I'll just give up 4 future first-round picks and a couple of seconds just to go land that quarterback. So that might not be good for the NFL as these GMs, obviously they're getting fired left and right. If you aren't successful, like maybe they could just go down the line and just start trading a ton of future draft capital. Now, I will say a benefit for the NFL here would be the barbershop aspect of it, where if you're chopping up with your friends, you're talking about some blockbuster trades, the ability to trade 5 years of draft capital compared to 3 would make it a lot more entertaining. I mean, that's why the NBA, during their prime, when the trade deadline was awesome, the offseason was awesome, you could talk about anybody getting traded to anywhere. Now, obviously, that has changed with the new CBA and the NBA, but I think the barbershop talk aspect of it would be elite for the NFL. We could talk about anybody getting traded because you just give up 5 first-round picks potentially in a deal. So let's connect this back to the Minnesota Vikings. If Joe Burrow were available and this rule gets passed through, would you trade 5 first-round picks for Joe Burrow? Give me a T for trade. Give me a P for pass. You guys let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section. Now, another reason why this could be bad is because the NBA had to employ the Ted Stepien rule because of mismanagement of picks back in the 80s. And, obviously the NBA, they were very similar to the NFL. We could only trade, or you could trade 5 years of picks, and they took advantage of it. So then the NBA employed this rule. We're saying after trading away the Cavaliers' owned and acquired first-round draft picks for 5 consecutive years, the NBA instituted the rule that prevented a team from trading away its first-round pick in consecutive years. It should be noted that there are now loopholes allowing teams to get around this rule, such as pick swaps, but the fact that it had to be instituted in the first place because of Stepien's undisciplined trade concepts is really the story. So this would obviously completely change the NFL, because let's just say they do go the 5 years. I'm assuming they would add that rule where you can't trade draft picks back-to-back seasons, where you have to have, in control of at least, let's just say for this year, like the Vikings traded 3 first-round picks. They couldn't just go 26, 27, 28. They would have to go 26, 28, and 30. Now, how do you work around that? The NBA started, pick swapping. So like the Vikings, let's just say with the Bengals, they would give up 26, 28, and 30, but then just pick swaps in 27 and 29, where it's technically like 5 first-round picks. Not really, but there are ways around it. Now, I would also say the NFL trade deadline would be absolutely insane. Because if you are a team, for example, where you didn't think you were going to be good, and you ended up starting the season 7-2, and you're looking at a guy like, I don't know, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett could potentially be available, why wouldn't you just go out there and just trade 4 first-round picks for the guy and go give yourself the best chance to win that season, because you have to be aggressive in the NFL to go win that Super Bowl. And I could see teams getting almost ultra aggressive at the deadline, so that could be very entertaining. Now, however, with how different the NFL is every single year, I doubt teams would be willing to give up first-round picks 4 or 5 years down the line, because we know in the NFL, like, hey, who would have thought the Seahawks would have won the Super Bowl this time last year? Who would have thought a bunch of these teams would be, as bad as they were? Take a team, like the Washington Commanders. They're just in the NFC title game. A year later, they're drafting top 10 in the NFL draft. So the NFL changes every single year. So I still think GMs would be hesitant, especially if you have job security, to go down the line and trade that future draft capital. But let's get wild here. How about this hypothetical Joe Burrow trade if this were allowed and you could trade draft picks, way into the future? Well, the Vikings would obviously have to give up their first-round pick this year, pick number 18. And what if they attach 3 more first-round picks on top of that? And 28, 29, and 30, keeping their own 2027 first-round pick. Then you give up Jonathan Gennard and J.J. McCarthy. This is fair trade value for Joe Burrow. And maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm drinking too much of the Joe Burrow juice here. But I would do this deal. Because I think still with the Vikings core of Jefferson, Burrow, Flores, and Kevin O'Connell, screw the picks, make it happen, because you would be Super Bowl favorites, possibly NFC next season. So you guys let me know. Am I crazy for wanting to accept this deal? Would you do it? Give me a Y for yes or give me an N for no down below in the comments section. This would be a blockbuster, no doubt about it. You guys let me know your thoughts. Would you accept this deal? Or tell me if I'm crazy for wanting to accept this deal. Y for yes or N for no. Now, I do want to close today's show out talking about the running back position here for the Minnesota Vikings and talk about 5 running backs the Vikings can sign during 2026 NFL free agency. We'll talk about that here in just a second, but let me tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor, and that is Factor Meals. Now, if you guys could, head to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50off and use promo code VikingsChat50off to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus free breakfast for 1 year. Now, if you guys want to eat better, but you have 0 time and 0 energy to make it happen, Factor doesn't ask you to meal prep or follow recipes. It just removes the entire problem. 2 minutes, real food, done. Now, Factor is already made by chefs and designed by dietitians and delivered to your door, so you heat it for 2 minutes and eat. They got lean proteins, colorful vegetables, whole food ingredients, healthy fats, the stuff you'd make if you had the time. My favorite part about Factor is that they have no refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, no refined seed oils, and they have over 100 rotating weekly meals every single week, including high protein, calorie smart, GLP-1 support, and ready to eat salads. So head over to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50off. Use promo code VikingsChat50off to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus free breakfast for 1 year. This offer is only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. All right, so why we're talking about the running back position is because I think it's likely that the Vikings will end up cutting Aaron Jones this offseason. Just the cap benefits are too, beneficial for the Minnesota Vikings with them strapped up against the cap. You save just under $8 million, so I think Aaron Jones will be out of this room, leaving just Jordan Mason. Now, the top back that's on the market in free agency is Kenneth Walker of the Seattle Seahawks, but the Seahawks are going to bring him back. This guy just won Super Bowl MVP. There is no doubt in my mind that he will be playing for Seattle next season, plus with Zach Charbonnet tearing his ACL. They need him. He's obviously a key part of that offense, so he's not an option. Now, the next biggest option out there and the next best option would be Jets running back Breece Hall. Now, Breece Hall is a dynamic back. There's no doubt he's got elite top-end speed. He's a home run hitter, and him playing with the New York Jets over the last couple of years, he's been very good. He's been healthy also the last 3 seasons, which I love the most. 2023, 17 games, 24, 16 this past year, 16 games as well. Finally eclipsing over 1,000 yards this past season in 2025, but also a dynamic receiving threat out of the backfield, and I think his best football is yet to be seen. So Breece Hall, you would have to pay him a bunch, which I don't really think the Vikings would want to pay Breece Hall that amount of money, probably around $13, $14 million per year. So it sounds good if you're playing Madden Ultimate Team, but just financially, it doesn't make too much sense for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, a guy that makes a lot of sense, and probably my favorite option on this list, is Kenneth Gainwell. Kenneth Gainwell is one of the best receiving backs in the NFL, and I fully expect Pittsburgh to do everything they can to keep him back. So the Vikings will probably have to get in a bidding war for Gainwell, but the biggest reason why I love Gainwell is because of his receiving ability. And I think he would be a great option next to Jordan Mason, considering the price. Only probably going to have to pay him $5 to $8 million per year. But this guy had 73 catches this past season for 486 yards. This guy is a dynamic receiving threat. You can throw screens to him. You can do a bunch of different things. And also, he's very effective on the ground. Still averaged 4.7 yards per carry on 114 touches on the ground this season. So Gainwell, if you're incorporating the price, his kind of match with Jordan Mason style running back he would be number 2 or number 1 on my list for these guys we're talking about today. Now, Travis Etienne's another option out there. Now, I think he's very similar to a guy like Breece Hall, where he's probably going to end up getting maybe a slightly less than Breece, but he'll still probably get around $11-12 million per year. I mean, he's had 3 out of his last 4 seasons going for over 1,000 rushing yards. He's also a good receiving threat out of the backfield, and this past season was fantastic for Jacksonville as they won that division this past year. 1,100 yards, just under 300 through there, and 13 total touchdowns for Travis Etienne, but I just think he's a little out of the Vikings' price range. I don't think the Vikes, unless they completely, backload these contracts, I can't see them spending huge money on a tight end like Etienne or Breece Hall. But how about a guy like Javonte Williams now? Javonte Williams obviously started off his NFL career with the Denver Broncos, came to Dallas this past season and had his career best year. He had over 1,200 rushing yards on the ground and found the end zone 13 times. Obviously, injuries plagued him in 2022, tearing his knee up. But since then, he's been very, very solid. Even 23 and 24 for Denver, just a solid back on the limited touches he got. This past season with Dallas, he was fantastic. Now, obviously, being the running back for the Dallas Cowboys, probably one of the easier jobs in the NFL because teams are selling out to stop Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. But I think he'll probably get around $8 million per year, which I would have some interest in Javonte. But if it's between Javonte Williams or drafting a running back, whether that's round 3 or round 4, I'd probably just draft a guy. And the same could be said about Tyler Allgeier. Kind of falls in the same bucket for Javonte Williams as me. Obviously been overshadowed with his time with the Atlanta Falcons, with Bijan Robinson, getting majority of the, praise there. And, he's been solid in the NFL. He's obviously that physical, bruising goal line back. I mean, he had 8 touchdowns this past season. So he's similar to Jordan Mason. So I'd probably go in a different direction if they're going to bring a running back in. And my number 1 guy out of all of these would be Kenneth Gainwell. He's an elite receiving threat. Wouldn't have to pay him too much. I think he would fit in also very well with what Kevin O'Connell wants to do. So you guys let me know. Name a running back the Vikings should sign. My guy's going to be Kenneth Gainwell. But you guys let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And appreciate all of you guys for tuning in and watching today's show. We'll get on out of here. As always, let's go Vikes.